Good afternoon. My name is Campbell McCrary. I'm a Vice President, Capital Markets at Anvest Capital in New York. Welcome to the Anvest Capital Inc. live webinar with Cabral Gold. Cabral trades on the TSX Venture as CBR, as in Charlie Baker Rio, and on the OTC as CBGZF, which would be Charlie Baker Golf Zebra Fox. Hope you'll enjoy today's program. It will be available in replay mode shortly after the end of the session. Do feel free to chat in your questions in the question pane of the GoToWebinar control panel, or simply email them in and we'll try to ask the questions in real time. A little bit about us. Anvest Capital is a New York-based specialist investment management and corporate finance firm focused solely on the natural resources sector. Important disclaimer, please read it. This call is for informational purposes only. We're pleased today to have with us Alan Carter, Dr. Alan Carter, in fact, the president and CEO and director of Cabral Gold. Geologist by background, Alan was a co-founder of both Peregrine Metals and Cuprum Resources, which were sold to Stillwater and B&A Minera Chao, respectively. He's currently director and a chairman of both Fremont Gold, which you've seen on previous programs, and Altamira Gold Corp. He has been directly involved in discovery of 5 gold mines, including 4 in Brazil, the subject of today's call, and was co-founder of Magellan Minerals, which was acquired by Anfield Gold Corp in 2016, which is now part of Equinox Gold. He founded Cabral in late 2016 and went public in 2017, so relative newcomer. Welcome, Alan, and tell us a bit about what you're doing in Brazil.
Thanks very much, Campbell. I'm here today, ladies and gentlemen, to talk a little bit about our company, which is a company, as Campbell said, Cabral Gold. We have a pretty exciting gold district in Brazil that we own 100% of. And I think we'll start with perhaps why Cabral Gold might be a little bit different and what really sets us apart from many of the other companies, small resource companies in our space. As Campbell mentioned, as a board and management, we've been involved with a number of gold discoveries in Brazil. We know this country extremely well. Those 5 deposits cumulatively have about 5 million ounces to date, and several of these deposits are still growing. I think the other thing that sets us apart is that we own a large proportion of the issued and outstanding shares of Cabral. We have an asset here. We have an initial resources of just under 1 million ounces, 20% of which is indicated, and 800,000 ounces, or 80% of the total resources that we've found to date are inferred. There's an awful lot of upside to that initial starting asset base, so we are targeting in a district here which we believe will contain at least 5 to 10 million ounces ultimately, and it is district scale. That column in the middle there just emphasizes that point. We have been making a number of recent discoveries with some very exciting high-grade boulders on surface, and we're currently drilling. Now, we're very much focused on the high-grade potential of this project. We've done some drilling last year. We got some very, very good drill results here. You can see those there in the 4th column to the right, 7.5 meters at 18 grams, 5.5 meters at 13 grams. The exciting thing about the upside to this whole district is that we already have 8 other target areas where we've done a little bit of drilling, a limited amount of drilling, outside the 1 million ounces in resources that we have, which are actually contained within 2 deposits. And so there is an indication, there are 8 other indications just from drilling, that there are a number of additional deposits here to be discovered. And we have a 25,000 meter drill program, which has just kicked off. I mentioned that we've made some exciting recent discoveries. I'll come on to those later. Some really, really stunning high-grade numbers, particularly at Alonso and Medusa, and we'll talk about those in a second. Corporate snapshot here. The share price today, I think, is a little bit less than 60 cents, but it's essentially a $60 million market cap company. We have about $4.2 million currently in cash. Institutional shareholders here is just under 40% of the total amount of shares that are issued here. Our institutional shareholders include Phoenix, Crescat Dundee, Royal Bank of Canada, You can see that the share price here has gone up quite a lot since about June. We think we're just getting started here. Now, I myself, like many of you, I invest in this space, and one of the things I look for as an investor is that management is heavily invested in the company. And so far, I've written checks that amount to about $1.7 million Canadian into this company, and you can see that I've taken a significant chunk. At least these are big numbers for me as part of the recent private placements. I think that's very important. Campbell's talked a little bit about my background. I do have a PhD in geology, but I've basically been working in the capital markets for the last 15, 16 years almost now. Spent 10 years living in South America, so I'm fluent in both Spanish and Portuguese. I'm joined in this endeavor by some really quality people. Adrian MacArthur, the guy in the top right, has a PhD in geology too, very experienced in Brazil, fluent in the language. Rory McKnight is an Australian guy who's lived in Brazil for 20 years and was very instrumental putting the first mine in this whole region into production. I'm very proud of this team. Now, for some of you, you'll be unfamiliar with Brazil, and we could obviously spend the rest of this hour talking about Brazil, but I think some of the things to mention that are worth mentioning here, it is a very mining-friendly country. There are lots of very large gold mining companies that have big gold mines in Brazil, notably Kinross, Yamana, AngloGold Ashanti, and Equinox. There has been quite a lot of M&A activity in the mining space in the last 12 to 18 months, notably the Equinox Leagold deal, which has created a very large gold mining company. 4 of their 6 mines are in Brazil. The geology here is very, very prospective. As you will all be aware, gold deposits are really completely dependent on the geology, the underlying rock types, obviously, and the geology here is very similar to West Africa and parts of Eastern Canada, Western Australia. It is a very, very prospective area that is largely unexplored. Very transparent title. There's a competitive mining law here. The Brazilian real has devaluated significantly in the last 12 months against the US and Canadian dollars, which means we get a lot more bang for our buck, for our dollars, than we did 12 months ago. And so there's quite a lot happening here. And the other thing that's really important to realize is, unlike a lot of other companies that have projects, for example, in Canada and northern parts of the US, we can actually work here 12 months of the year. Now, the part of Brazil that we're working in, you can see here in the top right, the state is called Pará State. It's a very, very large state. It is resource rich. It's a very, very large producer of aluminum, iron ore, copper. Now, there was a gold rush here in that area that you can see in that small box called in the Tapajós, which was actually the world's largest recorded gold rush in history. So the gold rush that started here in 1978, so it's a fairly recent phenomenon, was 10 times larger than the California gold rush. And so this rather complicated map shows a whole bunch of things, but most of the colors are different companies with claims. You can see our claims there in yellow. There are some major companies here which are very active, notably Anglo American, Nexa, and Eldorado Gold. All those little tiny black triangles you can see, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor moving, but there's a lot of black triangles on this map scattered through here. Probably 100, 150 of these black triangles were areas where during the gold rush days 40, 50 years ago, informal miners were washing gold from streams. And the richest area during that gold rush, which produced, the government of Brazil estimates somewhere between 20 and 30 million ounces of placer gold. That's gold that's all been eroded into the streams. The biggest and most productive area was this Cuiú area, right in the middle. And as I said, it is a district and we own 100% of it. Now, we have some very important neighbors, and this slide just shows the distribution of our land in pink and our neighbor's land, Eldorado Gold, which is a very large gold mining company. They have a project called TZ. I was fortunate enough to be involved in the discovery of that. It is fully permitted. It's about 2.5 million ounces. It's not yet in production. They haven't actually made a construction decision yet. But the important thing about this map is that during the gold rush days, there was 200,000 ounces of gold washed from the streams at TZ. In contrast, there was 2 million ounces of gold washed from the streams at Cuiú. So if the amount of historic placer production from these two projects is any guide, there should be an awful lot more hard rock gold at Cuyu than there is at TZ. Now this map is just zooming in terms of that area in a little bit more detail. So I'm zooming in on this larger ellipse here, showing our area in a bit more detail. You can see the white spidery lines that here are the areas that were mined for placer gold during the gold rush. And all these streams are draining down from the northwest and the north, and they're heading south. Now the two deposits that we've got here, Central and MG, you can see the yellow outlines. The black dots here are drill holes. The two deposits are about 5 kilometers or 3 miles apart. In our opinion, those two deposits currently explain about 10% of the placer gold. So 10% of the placer gold that was mined during the gold rush can be tracked back and explained by those two deposits. The question, which is really the opportunity here, is where is the other 90% of the gold coming from? Now you can see a number of yellow dots here. These are all targets. We actually have some additional targets here. And we have some areas. Some of these yellow dots, by the way, have had a few black dots, so a few drill holes. But there are a number of new areas that are popping up, particularly in the eastern here, where we've got some very good high-grade boulders on surface. And we've just started drilling this area in the southeast corner called Alonzo. Now, as I said at the outset, we're focused on the high-grade potential of this whole district. It is a large area. It's 36,000 hectares, or about, for those of you that work in acres, about 80,000 acres. It's large. There is high-grade potential both within the two existing deposits themselves at MG and Central. There are, as I said earlier, high-grade drill intercepts that we have in 8 other target areas outside the two deposits, and there are numerous undrilled targets within this district that are shedding gold into the drainages. And as I said earlier, some of them have very high-grade gold values on surface. So I'm going to have a very brief look at these 3 aspects of the high-grade potential here with the project. This first aspect, this cartoon in the top right, really shows a block model showing the style of mineralization that we have. We have very steeply dipping quartz veins that are up to 10 meters wide, generally about 2 or 3 meters wide, and they're surrounded by low-grade halos of gold mineralization. And all of the known deposits that we have, both of the known deposits and most of the known targets that we have conform to that model. Now, the current resource estimate, as I said, is about 1 million ounces. That does not include most of the high-grade mineralization that you can see here outlined within this dark orange line. A lot of that has not been captured in the high-grade resource. We believe that further drilling will bring that in, but if you look at the current difference in the resource estimate right now, which is this column in the bottom table here, you can see we've just got just under 1 million ounces, but actually that does not capture most of the high-grade drill intercepts that we have. If you include those high-grade drill intercepts, that resource just within the two deposits that we've got goes up to about a combined total just under 1.5 million ounces. In order to capture those high-grade zones, we need to do more drilling within these, targeting the high-grade deposits of both MG and Central. We have a lot of high-grade drill intercepts here. As I said, many of these are not completely reflected in the resource estimate. You can see some of these here in this table in page 12. Unfortunately, I don't have time to get into a lot of detail on these, but there are some very good high-grade drill intercepts, 13 meters at 17 grams, 10 meters at 14. Bear in mind, most of these drill intercepts, whilst they're narrow, they are surrounded by halos up to 15 meters either side of the intercept of, 1 gram, 1.5 gram mineralization. Now, the key thing about these high-grade zones is, are they continuous? And certainly at MG, we have some very good indications from the drilling that's been done to date that they continue along strike. In this case, we think we have a zone here that likely continues 300 or 400 meters along strike, and they can be traced down dip. And it's the same really at Central, the second deposit that we have here. Again, a lot of this high-grade mineralization is not currently captured by the resource estimate. We have 40 high-grade intercepts above 10 grams a ton, some spectacular intercepts here. And again, most of these drill intercepts would be surrounded by low-grade halos. Again, the question at Central is, are they continuous? And this map, particularly the section that you see on the right here, demonstrate that they can be continued down dip. This is basically a section, the yellow zone that you can see here. It's a cross section through the deposit. The yellow area is the low-grade envelope, And in this section, we have 3 high-grade veins which are extending both down dip and up dip. And how deep they go, we don't know. Both of these deposits are open down dip and could go to some considerable depth. Now, the second aspect of the potential here, and perhaps the more exciting thing for myself as a geologist, and I suspect a number of our shareholders, is the fact that we have some very high-grade drill intercepts which are outside these 2 deposits. Again, we've just been looking at Central and MG. This map, it is a complicated map. There's quite a lot of information. It's very similar to the previous map. The background here, by the way, is not topography. Those beautiful colors that you're looking at is magnetic data, which is very, very important for mapping geological structures. Geological structures almost always host gold deposits. Well, gold deposits are almost always hosted by geological structures, I should say. But there are a number of very exciting drill intercepts which are outside the 2 deposits here. Notably, an area down through here, Central Southeast, which is 500 meters to the southeast of Central, where we have 27 meters at 6.9 grams. There's an area up here called Jerry-Munsima, which is very interesting, where we've got 39 meters at 5.1 grams. There are a number of other high-grade intercepts here, for example, 3.4 meters at 36.9 grams. That's just 300 meters or so north of MG. Now, in our opinion, there are a number of these areas where we already have a little bit of drilling will ultimately prove up to be deposits, and we're hoping that they will prove to be at least the same similar sort of size to Central or MG. And what I'd like to do now is just briefly look at Central and then briefly look at the MG area. As I said, there are lots of other things going on outside these 2 areas. But this map on slide 17 of the presentation here shows that we have a 5-kilometer long geochemical anomaly. It's a long, lengthy anomaly where we have highly anomalous gold in the soils. The deposit that we know it exists so far occupies less than 20% of that strike length. And we have had some drilling up here in Powder Miranda and got some very good results you can see here in yellow. And again, we have some good results down through here where we've only got about 3 or 4 holes to the southeast. So there's a lot of potential within this trend, and the current drill program will in part test a number of targets within this corridor. Similar sort of thing at MG, which is the second deposit. We think we've made another discovery immediately to the north of MG, 500 meters to the north. We have a lookalike east-west trending zone. And you can see from the cross-section, that cross-section there on the right shows a section through MG and shows the high-grade vein, and the paler yellow is the low-grade envelope there. And the width of the low-grade envelope in this section is about 40 meters. But again, the key thing with this section and the map is that there's continuity of grade down dip and along strike. Interesting thing on this particular map is that we've got some very high-grade drill intercepts which are actually not part of either the known deposit of NG or this new zone that we've got at Mashishi. So we need to do more work on those. Now, I said there was a third aspect to the high-grade potential of this project, and there is what else could be in this district if it wasn't enough to already have just 2 deposits plus 8 other areas with a little bit of drilling. We have probably another 10 areas or so at least where we know that there is gold being eroded into the streams here, and we've done no drilling. And these red arrows are pointing to wrinkles that you might be able to pick out in this colored map, which again is the magnetic map. I've extended it a little bit further to the east in this case to show there is an awful lot of placer gold draining the eastern portion of this concession area or this district where we've done no work. And as I said, some of these wrinkles have some very high-grade boulders on surface, so we'll have a brief look at Alonzo, Medusa, and Silmar. Alonzo's where we're drilling. Now, Alonzo we found in February of this year. It's brand new, or 6 months ago it was brand new. We knew that there was gold in the stream. There's some very coarse gold nuggets that you can see in the picture there on the top slide there, which is very unusual. And we started finding some very large boulders. We took some samples, we broke some pieces off. We took samples from 24 different boulders in this trend. And these are the results that you can see on page 21. Now, these are actually gold results. They're not silver results. They look like they should be silver, but they're not. The average grade of all of the samples that we took from the boulders here on surface is 91.7 grams. And this is the target that we're drilling first. We have no drill results here. We've done no previous drilling. It was brand new in February, and we should have results on Alonzo very soon. Medusa's another one. We found this in April. A similar sort of thing, really, with boulders in that we found across a 350-meter strike length. It is located in a big kink to a major geological structure, which you may be able to pick out on this map. That geological structure is the most important geological structure in this whole region and controls our neighbor's deposit as well, which is down here in red, which is owned by Eldorado Gold. But Medusa is located in a bend in that geological structure. Silmar is an area up to the north. We hope to start drilling this after we've completed the drilling at Medusa. Lots of very coarse angular gold nuggets coming out of an area here. It's quite a limited area. We think we've got a very good idea of where these gold nuggets are coming from. And there are numerous other targets on the property that unfortunately I don't have time to discuss given our time constraints. Now, this is exciting. We own a whole district. There are many small companies like us that own a part of a district, but we own the whole thing. We've just started a drilling with this drill rig. It is what's called a reverse circulation rig. It will allow us to drill very quickly and very cheaply. We purchased this rig in February of this year, and we anticipate that the cost of drilling is going to come in around about 10% of all of the drilling that we did last year, which was diamond drilling. So as I said, we have a very aggressive drill program here. It's going to last at least 6 to 9 months, and it is going to go on and it's going to test probably in excess of 10 targets, probably more than that. So what's the opportunity here? As I said, I'm the second largest shareholder in this company, so I'm fully aligned with my shareholders. We as a management team own 19% of the shares, and we've had 5 gold discoveries in Brazil in the last few years. Not only do we know how to find gold, we also know how to exit and transact, having sold our last company to a company called Anfield, which became part of Equinox. This isn't just a good story. We already have an asset. The initial resource here, we're starting with 1 million ounces in the ground. So this isn't something that where we're starting with nothing and we're just dependent on the first drill results. We already have an initial starting resource here of about 1 million ounces. And we're adjacent to a major company that has a fully permitted 2 million ounce project. There's enormous upside to the project. There's no doubt of that. There's 8 other areas, as I said, with very high grade drilling and Septs where we need to get more drilling done. And there are a number of high grade targets that have had no drilling to date. The other thing I look for as an investor is news flow. There's going to be an awful lot of news coming out starting very soon on the results of this drilling, and it will go on well into the new year. So what that means for everyone who's listening in is that there are multiple potential catalysts. Now, the current market cap of this company is only about $60 million Canadian. So on an enterprise basis, if you look at that based on the amount of gold that we have in the ground, it's just over $40 US an ounce. And I think if you set that against the current gold price, which is around 1900 US, there's a tremendous amount of upside. That's it. I've left as much time as I possibly could for questions. So Campbell, please, if you could open the floor, I'd be very happy to answer as many questions as I possibly can.
Sure. Up to today in the project area, how is your success rate in finding new discoveries by following up surface samples?
That is a very, very good question, and it's difficult to illustrate with all these maps, because what these maps are not showing are all of the samples that we've collected on surface. I think if you look at the fact that we have very good drill intersections in 10 areas really, so 2 of which are already deposits and 8 of which have a little bit of drilling on those. There are obviously a few areas here that we've drilled and not got success, notably this Babby area. It's one of the few areas where we've drilled. We did about 6 holes in this Babby area and didn't get anything, but I'd have to say the success rate is very high here. The targets all have different criteria. They're a combination of soil sampling, rock sampling, the magnetic signature. We use lots of different criteria to generate the targets here. But in terms of targets that we've drilled where we've got versus targets that we've drilled where we've got high-grade drilling at Sept, I'd have to say the success rate is probably around about 70 to 80%. But it's a very good question.
You're on mute, Campbell.
That's people coming in. Do some of them end up being an in situ mineralization? The sample.
Well, sorry, can you repeat the question? I don't think I caught it
Do
all.
some of them end up being in situ mineralization? This is the new discoveries by following up on surface samples.
Yeah, I mean, the question here is, and this is sort of, if you're working in Canada, you know, you can get some of these boulders and they can be transported 100 kilometers. And the reason for that is because they've been picked up by glaciers during the last ice age. This part of the world was not subject to that kind of glaciation. So the boulders that we're seeing here on surface, for example, at Alonso, I had a bunch of questions, you know, once we started finding the boulders at Alonso and at Medusa. Well, are those boulders in situ? You know, where are they coming from? Have they been transported hundreds of meters, kilometers? And whilst it's very early days on both these things, we know from our experience that these boulders have not traveled very far at all. Perhaps a few tens of meters, in all likelihood, not tens of meters. And the reason that we know that is because we've got a coincident gold in soil anomaly. So we've done soil sampling, trying to map where the source of these boulders is, and we can see there's a very strong magnetic feature. Now, these magnetic features that you can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor through here, but there's a very strong wrinkle in the mag here that's very important, and that sits directly underneath where all the boulders are. So we think the boulders are pretty much in situ in most of the areas. Now, where you've got a strong slope, boulders, of course, can run down slope, but that's not the case at Alonso. Some areas where surface samples have moved down slope, you know, we could be as much as 30 to 50 meters outside. We could be seeing boulders that have moved that sort of distance, but generally they haven't moved very far at all.
And then a follow-up question to that, and I'll pass this to my colleague. Can you talk about some past successful attempts finding the source of the placers?
Well, yeah. Again, I'll keep it on this slide. I mean, this is quite again. Tocantinzinho was a classic. I mean, it was just. Let me just go back. I mean, it was our first discovery in Brazil. There was placer gold known through here, and obviously all this placer gold has to be eroding from somewhere. There has to be a hard rock source, both in the case of TZ and MG and Central. As I said, we've found the source of probably about 10% of the placer gold at TZ at Cuiú. So most of the placers are unexplained. But at TZ, we were fortunate enough there to see that there were gold-bearing quartz veins exposed at the base of the sand and gravel in the stream bed. So we knew that the gold that had been mined informally 40 years ago during the gold rush days was actually coming right underneath from the veins that were outcropping in the stream bed. And that actually, I think we saw an outcrop there that was perhaps about 8 meters wide in the base of the stream bed. That became 2.5 million ounces. You know, it's a large gold deposit. So it's not as easy as you might think, because most of these areas are covered by soil and vegetation, and so there isn't a lot of outcrop here. But yeah, those would be a couple of examples.
Thanks for that.
Thanks for that, Alan. And yeah, just to follow on from some of Campbell's questions. So for you guys, it's very important to, you know, make sure the mapping is good, soil sampling, magnetics, and just following those placer channels. Is that kind of your key focus?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of other criteria we will use, Stuart. Drone imagery is very important for us. There are a lot of other things, but yeah, the key things would be soil and auger sampling. There was a giant lake here, we think probably about 100,000 years ago, relatively recently in geologic time, that deposited a bunch of mud and sand over the whole area, and that acts as a kind of a mask for about 70% of the area here. So you know, we need to seeing through that can be challenging, and a lot of the time we are doing what's called auger sampling. So there are shallow auger holes where we penetrate through that mud and that sand down to about a depth of 10 meters, so we can actually start to get samples from the top of bedrock. So there are a number of criteria we use here, but it's a pretty exciting district.
Yeah, and does the vegetation impact any like penetration from the geophysics, or is it?
No.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. The geophysics, the magnetics is really seeing the actual response from the rock. As you might imagine, vegetation does not, it's non-magnetic, but you know, on my kitchen countertop here in my house, I have a granite countertop, and there are little black minerals in there, and a lot of those little black minerals is magnetite, which gives a lot of granites a weakly magnetic character to it. Not enough to stick your you know, piece of metal on it or put it on the fridge or anything like that, but you can use the characteristics of the underlying rock, and that's what a lot of geophysical methods use. They're looking at physical properties of the rock, and in this case, the reason I've shown you these beautiful maps, these colored maps, is the magnetic signature of this area is very, very important because it is mapping those geological structures.
Yeah, and then of your total project area or concession area, kind of, you know, how much have you covered in terms of geophysics or you know, surface samplings, you know, magnetics, mapping?
Yeah.
And how much
Great
further
question.
have you got to go?
Great question. Well, again, I'll use this map. Now, this map is quite a large map. You're looking at an area there, east-west, which is about 12 kilometers across, and that is completely enclosed within our concession area. We've flown it all with geophysics, but in terms of what else could be lurking in this district, there's an awful lot of this district that we haven't explored yet, particularly the eastern part. This eastern really third of this mapped image, all these white spidery lines that you can see in the eastern third here is gold that was mined during, it's placer gold that was mined from the streams. And it's all coming from different places in the concession area. Now, we've done most of our work. In fact, all of the drilling so far has been, you can see where it all is because you can see all these black dots. There are an awful lot of black dots well, there is no black dots basically over here in the east. As I said, we've just started drilling the Alonso thing, but I'd have to say most of this area is unexplored. Most of this district is unexplored. As I said, we think with the two deposits that we've got now, we can explain probably about 10% of the placer gold that was mined here. With the 8 other areas that are not highlighted on this particular version of the map, where we've got a little bit of drilling, got some high-grade intercepts, those together with the 2 existing deposits could explain 30 to 40% of the placer gold here. But again, there's a huge amount of placer gold here, and we don't yet know where it's coming from.
Yeah, it's exciting to think how much upside is left. Thanks for that, Artie.
Thanks, Alan. How did the recent airborne magnetic data reprocessing go, and what came out of it?
We're continuing to reprocess the magnetic data because it is so important. This is an airborne magnetic data set that you're looking at here. We have reprocessed it several times in an effort to squeeze as much information as we can out of this. What's not shown in this presentation is that we obviously have an interpretation of this data set, so that we have interpreted a number of structures on here which we think are very important and potentially explain a lot of the currently unexplained placer gold here. And I think if you look at this map, again, you can see the red arrows here, but I don't know, can you see my cursor here, Campbell? Is it possible to see my cursor moving?
Yeah, we can.
Right, so for example, on this area up near Silmar, you can see there's a very strong east-northeast trending structure coming through here. We think that structure explains a lot of the gold coming down these streams. And again, here's another one. Look at this, just to the right of this legend here. You can see that the stream in white is flowing from north to south, and it has some placer workings to the north of this sort of wrinkle, this east-west trending wrinkle. Look what happens as the stream flows over the wrinkle. There's an enormous amount of placer gold workings south of this this east-west trending structure that's picked out by the magnetics. So magnetics is very important. I've shown you this map 3 times because it's very, very important. It continues to be important in terms of helping us explain, where a lot of this unexplained gold in the placers is coming from.
Thanks for that. You mentioned intercepts like 39 meters, 5.1 grams per ton just outside the current deposit. I'm wondering like how far they are and what would be the effort to add them to the current block model, of is there any opportunity there?
Yeah, well, you can see this map. So this is a slightly smaller version, but it does show some of these high-grade intercepts and where they are. So please take some time to look at this on slide 16. The intercept you mentioned, 39 meters at 5 grams, is about 2.5 kilometers to the northeast of Central. We're hoping that that will turn into another central deposit. Will it turn into one giant deposit? No, this will be what we think will be a giant district, but it will contain multiple deposits here. And similarly, one of those other ones that I did mention, this 27 meters at 6.9, you can see that that's about 500 meters to the southeast of the southern edge of the central deposit. Now, it could be an extension, or it could be a separate deposit lurking here immediately southeast of the central. So this map doesn't show all the drill intercepts with gold outside the 2 deposits here, but it shows some of the more exciting ones. There are other ones on here though, guys, and there is a more detailed breakdown if you look at the technical report, which is on our website. You can get into that in more detail, but highly unusual. It's highly unusual, I think, for a small company like us to control a whole district. And as I said, that resource really is just step 1 on a multi-step process of proving that there's multiple deposits within this district.
Thank you. And with this ongoing RC drilling program right now, how easy for you to change the schedule based on coming results? Like when we think of timing and everything.
Yeah, good question. The reason I'm hesitating on that, because I did mention in the last webinar, in the last press release, I did mention that the schedule is likely to change. It undoubtedly will change. It's easier with some targets than others. Obviously, we have to make sure that we've got enough drill platforms ready for the drilling. So the program that we have outlined in the last press release will change. It's easier for some targets than it is for others. It's not incredibly difficult. It's not like we have to all these targets that you're looking at here have road access. So we're in pretty good shape. It's more easy than it is difficult to change the program, but it will change.
And like, how about the timing of receiving the assay results?
Yeah, well, the assay results, we announced that we'd mobilized the rig about a month ago, and so we started drilling a few days after that. There will be assay results coming out over the next 6 to 9 months at least. So this is not a short sort of 3 to 4 week program where we're drilling 1 or 2 targets. We're going to be drilling at least 10, and there will be drill results every few weeks. So there will be multiple, as I said, multiple catalysts here. The first set of drill results we expect very shortly. Fortunately, I can't give you an exact time. We've got quite a lot of samples in the lab. The rig is still drilling at Alonso. Yeah, as I said, it is a lengthy program with multiple targets that we're going to be testing here. So there's going to be a lot of news.
Thank you. Campbell?
When will you have a new resource estimate on the whole project?
I think that's going to take us a little bit of time. I think the earliest it could be is 12 months from now. I think the mistake a lot of folks tend to make is once a company issues a resource, they then expect the company to move to scoping study, pre-feasibility study, and feasibility study, i.e. start moving towards demonstrating that there's an economic deposit here. In this case, the resources that we've got really are in are the first step. So what we need to do is just explore this whole district and determine just how many deposits are here before we move to scoping study. But in terms of a resource estimate, that will be probably at least 12 months away. The focus for us over the next 12 months or so is on discovery. What we want to be doing is demonstrating that we've got deposit number 3, deposit number 4, deposit number 5. That's going to be very much our focus. And so once we've got that and made those discoveries, we'll start. We'll think about updating the resource. But it won't be for a while.
And then everything costs something. How much are you spending on drilling in the next year? And how much drilling will that get you?
Well, as I said, the drill program here is currently 25,000 meters. I'm hoping that will likely grow. The 25,000 meter program, several $1 million. As I said, we have $4.2 million cash. So that whole drill program is fully funded. There are quite a lot of warrants that are outstanding and in the money that could potentially bring in another $3.5 million before the end of November. So it is a pretty aggressive drill program. I think particularly when you compare it with the 2 programs that we drilled last year, which amounted to about 4,500 meters combined. So there's 52,000 meters, by the way, already drilled here. The bulk of that obviously was at MG and Central, and quite a lot of it was on some of these other targets. So there's an awful lot of work to be done here, but we have some very exciting targets, no question.
You may have mentioned this. When will you publish results again on Alonzo?
I can't be exact with that, Campbell. It will be in quite soon, in the next days and weeks.
Okay.
What we're not going to do, by the way, guys, is sort of like drip results out on a hole by hole basis. That doesn't make any sense. You know, we will release the results out in batches, so you know, we won't be releasing it on a hole by hole basis. It'll be groups of holes.
Okay. And then are you thinking of adding another rig or contracting out?
Yes. I mean, there's no question here that the other exciting thing that really perhaps doesn't come through with this presentation is we have a very aggressive regional reconnaissance program going on to try and identify additional targets. I mean, we already have a huge number of targets, but you know, most of the gold here is still unexplained. Even when you factor in the 8 areas where we've got some high-grade drill intercepts outside the resources. All this gold in the eastern part of the project area is unexplained, and I am very, very confident that we are going to be generating, as the regional reconnaissance work goes on, additional exciting targets here. It is a district. It's really special. I've looked at hundreds of gold projects in my career, and I haven't looked at anything quite this exciting because it is a whole district. It's quite different to the project next to us. You know, Eldorado have a great deposit there. They bought that deposit in 2010. They've done quite a lot of work on it since 2010 and have not grown the resource. But this is something that is in all likelihood going to be much, much larger, just because of the sheer amount of placer gold that came out of this region compared with the project next door, and also just because we've got just so many different targets here.
Thanks for that, Stu.
Yeah, and just on that, how did you come across this project originally?
Well, as I said, we had some early success as a team with Tocantinzinho, and you know, as I said, we were fortunate enough there to see actually gold-bearing veins exposed in the base of the stream bed. That's highly unusual. But the thing that's captivated us as a team is there was this massive gold rush here that started in 1978 and ran through to about 1995. It involved 1 million people. They're all washing gold from multiple places in the streams. This is the richest one. If you folks go down to Brazil and start chatting to people here in the local towns here, Everybody talks about Cuyu with some reverence. It was a bit like the Comstock lode in Nevada. You know, people talk about the Comstock. Well, this wasn't a lode. This was an area, one of over 100 areas where gold was being washed from the stream, but there was just an enormous amount of gold being washed from the streams at Cuyu. It was very rich. It was very, very productive. And if that is any guide, there should be an awful lot of gold in the hard rock granites here, a lot more than the current resource would suggest. Just to give you some idea, guys, I mean, look, this slide here, a lot of people in their presentations include photos they got off the internet or something, right? This is a photo that's not from our area, I hasten to add, but that is a 579-ounce gold nugget that was found in May on a nearby property by a friend of mine. Very, very unusual, but I think the fact that people are still pulling out these sorts of nuggets from the plazas really speaks to the potential of this whole region.
Yeah, and it's exciting. And was it overlooked by Eldorado, or they didn't know about it at the time you came across it?
That area was a complete surprise. A Brazilian friend of mine has had it for some time. And obviously very surprising to find a nugget like which is 18 kilos. You know, but as to why Eldorado did not focus on our project first, well, the thing that's really captivated me as a geologist for the last sort of 10 to 15 years of my career is, where is all this placer gold coming from? Why is it that it's such a huge area, a huge region, with all this gold that's been worked from the streams? All that gold in the streams has obviously been eroded from the surrounding rocks, just like pebbles and sand grains are eroded from the surrounding rocks. Gold has got into those placers through the same process, through millions of years of erosion. You know, we went to Cuyu, having recognized that there was potential in this district. We went to Tocantinzinho first, which is now owned by Eldorado, as I said, because we could see the veins exposed in the base of the stream bed, Stuart. But once we demonstrated that the gold was actually being very, very locally sourced, and the placer gold was actually being eroded directly on top of the actual underlying deposit, we then started looking at Cuyu next door, which obviously had produced 10 times more placer gold during the gold rush. So yeah, so that's a little bit on the history.
Yeah, thanks. And what's your relationship like with locals, artisanal miners in the area?
Yeah, excellent. Look, I think I'm really proud of our relationship with the community. There was a small village here of about 500 people. And that is a sort of a leftover from the gold rush days. It was obviously a much bigger community back then. There are about 50 people still washing a little bit of placer gold here. There's not a lot left, to be honest, but there are a few people. And we have an excellent relationship with those people. So we've just renovated the school. You know, we put air conditioning in, we put a new roof in, we've just put in a new borehole for a new clean supply of drinking water. We fund a health post in the village. There's no other healthcare in the village, so we provide healthcare for everybody in the village. You know, we do as much as we can. So you can actually see all that on our website. If you guys have an interest, please go to our website and look at that particular page. It's also in Portuguese. We've translated that section in Portuguese. I'm very proud of what we've been able to do. Could we do more? Of course we could. Do we want to? Absolutely. But you know, we are still a small exploration company here. We think we're sitting on a massive district here, but you know, we're absolutely committed to maintaining a really good relationship with the community.
Yeah, most definitely. And on your shareholder list, you have some pretty good shareholders. Have any of them completed a site visit at all? You know, when travel was allowed globally?
Yes, let's have a look here. Yeah, Dundee's been to site. I think of these shareholders, the institutional shareholders, I think Dundee's the only one that's been to site so far. You know, we've extended an open invitation to all our major shareholders to come see. If anybody is listening to this is in Brazil, please let me know. It has been a bit tough. This year, obviously, with the COVID pandemic, we did shut the project down for 3.5 months, not because we were instructed to by the government, because mining and mineral exploration is regarded as an essential industry in Brazil. So the mines have largely been working as normal, but just we're a little bit cautious. We didn't want to expose anybody. Obviously, we've got people, geologists flying in from different parts of Brazil. We didn't want to be bringing anything into the local community. So there was a hiatus from about the first week of April to mid-July, where we basically shut everything down. We're back there now. We've noticed that the cases, the COVID cases, new infections have dropped sharply in this area, and so that has given us a lot more confidence in order to go back in and continue working. So the drill program has been a little bit delayed, but we have had a number of folks come down and visit. Yeah, it's if anybody wants more information, obviously there's quite a lot on our website. There's even a Q&A. I put a Q&A page up there too. So if anybody has any sort of questions and they'd like for those questions to be shared amongst the wider public, then please let us know. I'm always open for new questions on the Q&A side. But we do have a technical report from 2018, which talks about a lot of this in detail. And look, I'm accessible. Please feel free to email me at alan@cabralgold.com anytime, and I'm quite responsive, so I try to be. So yeah, please let us know.
That's good. And just I've got one last question before I pass on to Artie. On slide 7, the plan view with your neighbours. If you could just give a quick summary of like what your neighbours are doing in the area, you know, drill programs or mining or studies, etc.
Yeah, complicated map. I didn't have a chance to get into it. I could have probably spent about half the presentation just talking about this map. But look, there are 5 known gold deposits in this region so far, only 5. And this is a large region. You can see all these black triangles where gold was washed from the streams. But of those 5 deposits, 2 are currently in production. They're being mined by a company called Serabi Gold. They have an active exploration program, UK-based company. We know them extremely well. One of those deposits is actually owned by a company called Gold Mining, a Canadian company. Not actually mining right now, but they have a number of gold deposits around the world. As a team, we've been involved in the discovery of 3 of those 5. So this is an area we know well. The largest one would be Tocantinzinho, which is El Dorado. I can't really speak to exactly what they're doing right now, but they do have a project which is construction ready. El Dorado's, Anglo-American Corporation is very active here, one of the world's largest mining companies. All these areas in blue are owned by Anglo-American, and my understanding is they have a very active exploration program, and they're not just searching for gold here, they're searching for copper as well. This whole region has copper potential as well as gold potential. And I think Nexa, which is one of the world's largest zinc producers, which is also listed here, they have about 500,000 hectares here. They're also active. So those would be the main companies that are active through here. There are smaller companies, but we have a very, very good land position here. And one of the things that I haven't mentioned is, what about the potential of all this other land that we have here outside of Cuiú Cuiú? Currently, we're 100% focused on Cuiú Cuiú, but we have an extensive amount of land, probably about 80,000 hectares or so, which is outside Cuiú Cuiú. And some of this land, notably Bom Jardim, produced an awful lot of gold. It's estimated that Bom Jardim on its own produced 1 million ounces of placer gold. And I think there's potential at Bom Jardim for another gold deposit, another hard rock gold deposit. But right now, we don't have the time or money to actually explore at Bom Jardim. We're focused on demonstrating the potential of the big one here, the one that really produced more placer gold than anywhere else, and that is Cuiú Cuiú.
Thank you. Artie or Campbell?
Can you briefly comment on your drilling cost? And are there any risks there in the future that can increase that, like changing rock type, something like that?
I didn't get the end of your question. Sorry, but
like
risks in terms of
are there any risks involved in the future for you that can increase the cost of drilling per meter?
Yes. So look, last year, what this slide doesn't show on slide 24, hopefully you're still seeing my my presentation deck. Last year we did 2 programs of diamond drilling, and the all-in cost per meter for those 2 programs was 247 Canadian dollars. That includes the analysis. This $25 a meter RC cost is obviously a fraction of that. And so that will mean that we'll be able to drill more. And there are obviously lots of inputs that go into that per meter basis. And yes, there is risk that that could increase. And there are lots of things that could potentially increase that. For example, lab costs, fuel costs. Perhaps it takes longer to move the rig than we anticipate could impact that. You know, sure. I mean that $25 Canadian a meter could go up somewhat. Do I think it will drastically go up? Not for the cost of our rig. No, if we bring in a third-party rig that we don't own, that's owned by a drill contractor that's obviously got to make money. Obviously, they won't be doing it for $25 a meter. It'll be significantly above that. But yeah, there's definitely potential for that to move up. But still, there's lots of room for that drill cost to go up significantly. Given our cash balance, we're still going to be doing an awful lot of drilling here. So yeah. I don't know if that answers your question. Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully it does.
Thank you so much.
Alan, we could easily go on another 30 minutes or 60 minutes, but I think we've reached the top of our hour, and we'll leave people hungry to reach out to you as you invited in person, or for the next, stay tuned for the next webinar in about a month and a half or so. With that, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We'll be asking for feedback when you log out. Please share a few lines. We'll appreciate it. And Alan will really appreciate it. And follow Cabral on the usual social media places. And for that matter, please follow Amvest Capital, especially on LinkedIn. And you'll get an idea of the markets. And we have post our upcoming events. With that, a closing statement, Alan, and basically, why should we buy some shares at 9:30 tomorrow morning? In summary.
Well, thanks, Campbell, and thank you to everybody who spent your valuable time in tuning here in to listen to this. I think, in summary, I would direct you to what the opportunity is here. This is a small company with a 60 million market cap, Canadian market cap, with already an initial resource of 1 million ounces that controls a whole district that was the site of the world's largest gold rush. Multiple targets, already high-grade drill intercepts in 8 other targets outside the 1 million ounces, and new targets coming up all the time, with a very aggressive drill program that is going to test at least 10 targets in the next few months. So what that means to our shareholders are there are multiple potential catalysts on the stock, and of course, as I said, management is fully aligned and invested with our shareholders.
Great, thank you. We'll pick it up soon. Good day, everyone.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.